today's topic of discussion is cell injury. Our today's topic of discussion, cell injury. Students, any change in the normal homeostatic environment of the cell is called cell injury. I repeat my words, any change in the normal homeostatic environment of the cell is called cell injury. This change causes structural change in the environment of the cell, functional change, as well as addition of new changes. So, on the basis of cell injury, we can divide the internal mechanism or internal homeostasis of the cell into three categories. Number one, reversible injury. Number two, cellular adaptation. And number third, irreversible cell injury. Students, in other words, we can say that whenever any stimulus causes cell injury, the fate of the injury will either be reversible or this injury will be converted into cellular adaptation, or this cellular injury will be of irreversible type. Okay? Now we discuss the causes of cell injury, or you can say etiology of cell injury. What are the factors which leads to cell injury? Number one, most important, hypoxia. Students, hypoxia is the most common and important type of cell injury. It may be because of ischemia, interrupted blood supply to the tissues. Number two, it may be because of decreased oxygenation at the blood. Decreased oxygenation of the blood means there is any abnormality or dysfunction at the level of the lungs. And as a result of this abnormality, the amount of blood is not being fully oxygenated. Okay? And third is impaired attachment of oxygen to the blood. Most common example is anemia, decreased hemoglobin. Students, in this case, although the amount of oxygen is fully adequate, but the amount of hemoglobin is deficient. As a result, the oxygen becomes less attached to the hemoglobin to form oxyhemoglobin, and as a result hypoxia occurs. Okay? Second type of second etiological cause of cell injury is mechanical factors. Mechanical factors. Students, mechanical factors include extremes of temperature like cold, warmth, as we see in burns, Okay, radiations, radiations. These are some of the common examples of mechanical factors which causes cell injury. Aging is also included in mechanical factors. Okay. Now, third factor which causes cell injury include chemical agents. Students, chemical agents like some poisons, they may cause cell injury. Some chemical substances like mercury, lead, arsenic, copper, iron, they may cause cell injury. Okay. Next is nutritional imbalance. Students, nutritional deficiency or nutritional excess both leads to cell injury. For example, deficiencies of proteins, deficiencies of essential amino acids, deficiencies of vitamins and trace elements in our food, they can cause cell injury. As we can see, iron deficiency anemia, pernicious anemia because of vitamin B12 and folic acid deficiency. Okay, all these deficiencies, they lead to cell injury. On the other hand, the excess of some nutritional elements may cause cell injury like obesity, atherosclerosis. Okay, they cause cell injury. Number 5, immunological reactions. Students, uncontrolled or exaggerated immune responses may cause cell injury like anaphylaxis, type 1 hypersensitivity reaction in which chemical mediators lead to severe cell injury. Okay, type 2 hypersensitivity reaction in which there is cytotoxic cell injury, immune complex mediated injuries. All these are related to immunological reactions. So now number 6, some genetic disorders. Genetic disorders may lead to cell injury. Some chromosomal abnormalities, they may cause cell injury. Gene mutation, it may cause cell injury. Okay, like Down syndrome, Klinefelter syndrome, abnormal chromosome numbers. So these are the common factors which leads to cell injury. Now students, I will be discussing with you characteristic features of reversible cell injury. Reversible cell injury. Students, as the name indicates, it is that type of cell injury in which the cell can return back to its normal state of homeostasis when the stimulus causing cell injury is removed. Okay? Now, what are the characteristic features of reversible cell injury? Number one, hydropic swelling. Hydropic swelling. This is the most common and typical microscopic feature of reversible cell injury. What happens in hydropic swelling? Students, the main mechanism responsible is malfunctioning of sodium-potassium pump. Malfunctioning of sodium-potassium pump. This mechanism is responsible for hydropic swelling. How it is responsible? When the sodium-potassium pumps present in the cell membranes, they are not functioning properly. As a result, there is increased accumulation of sodium ions inside the cells. And because of this sodium ion accumulation, there is movement of two water ions along with one sodium ion. As a result, there is accumulation of water contents inside the cells, and this is termed as hydropic swelling. Okay? Now, hydropic swelling, what happens? Endoplasmic reticulum, it swells up. It swells. Mitochondria, they also swells. There is formation of water vacuoles inside the cells. All these changes, they are part of hydropic swelling, and this hydropic swelling is responsible for reversible cell injury. Students, hydropic swelling can be stopped. The cell can return back to its normal state of homeostasis whenever the stimulus causing cell injury is removed. Okay? Now, what is the clinical example of hydropic swelling? Reversible cell injury. Clinical example is students, clinical example of hydropic swelling is splenomegaly. Splenomegaly. Number 2, hepatomegaly. These are the clinical examples where hydropic swelling occurs and leads to reversible cell injury in the spleen and liver. Splenomegaly, it is enlargement of the spleen. Hepatomegaly, it is enlargement of the liver. And these are typical prototype examples of hydropic swelling leading to reversible cell injury. Okay, students? Now, next microscopic feature of reversible cell injury is, first was hydropic swelling and second is intracellular accumulations. intracellular accumulation. It means accumulation of some substances inside the cells. Students, this accumulation is of three types. Number one, students, excessive production of endogenous substances. Excessive production of those chemical substances which are already present inside the cell. For example, there may be excessive production of protein byproducts, lipid byproducts, or carbohydrate byproducts. Okay? Number two, there may be deranged metabolisms inside the cell. Deranged metabolism inside the cells. And number third, accumulation of some pigments inside the cells. Okay students, I repeat, intracellular accumulation is of three types. Excessive production of endogenous substances like excessive production of lipids, excessive production of proteins, excessive production of carbohydrates inside the cells which cause cell injury, deranged metabolisms in the cell, any deficiencies. These deficiencies may be of enzyme deficiencies, as a result of which there is deranged metabolism inside the cells. Metabolic activities of the cells is disturbed. And number third, accumulation of some pigments inside the cells. I discuss one by one. Excessive production of endogenous substances. We see accumulation of fats inside the cells. Clinical example is fatty liver. Okay students, fatty liver is clinical example of accumulation of fats in the liver. Number two, there are certain genetical disorders which leads to accumulation of carbohydrate complexes. Carbohydrate complexes inside the cells. Okay, like Gaucher's disease, now students, other is deranged metabolism. Deranged metabolism, most important clinical example is diabetes mellitus. Okay, diabetes mellitus is most common clinical example of intracellular accumulations. Now students, pigments. Some of the pigments are produced in excessive amounts in the body. These pigments may be, for example, accumulation of iron in the cell. This is called hemosiderosis. Okay, accumulation of iron, accumulation of bilirubin products because of increased breakdown of hemoglobin. It may cause jaundice. Okay, so these are clinical examples of reversible cell injury. Okay students, now we discuss irreversible cell injury. Students, when factor leading to cell injury persists, the cell tries to adopt according to the change, and this is called cellular adaptation. Cellular adaptations. These cellular adaptations, they are reversible. When the stress or injury causing mechanism is removed, cell return back to its normal state of homeostasis. Example of cellular adaptations, you all know: hypertrophy, hyperplasia, metaplasia, okay. These are some of the clinical examples of cellular adaptation. That means the cell tries to survive by changing itself, and these changes, they are hypertrophy, hyperplasia and metaplasia. Now students, we move towards irreversible cell injury. Irreversible cell injury. Students, as the name indicates, this type of cell injury, it is permanent in nature. Cell does not goes back to its normal state of homeostasis, provided the reversible injury becomes prolonged. Stimulus causing cell injury, it continues to injure the cell. The irreversible cell injury, it includes necrosis, apoptosis, and ultimately cell death. Okay, these are the three features of irreversible cell injury, or we can say that these are the three fates of irreversible cell injury. Whenever the injury becomes irreversible, either the tissue will be necrosed or the cell will undergo apoptosis. Apoptosis means programmed cell death, and at the last, cell death. Ultimately, the cell dies off. Students, what are the microscopic features of irreversible cell injury? Most important is pyknosis. Students, pyknosis means shrinkage of nucleus. shrinkage of nucleus. It is called pyknosis. Number 2, karyorrhexis. Karyorrhexis. Students, karyorrhexis means the chromatin material inside the nucleus, it condenses and breaks down into smaller fragments. Karyolysis. Karyolysis, in simple words, you can say karyolysis is dissolution of chromatin material of the nucleus, which ultimately leads to destruction of the nucleus. Thank you, students. Allah Hafiz.